Thank you very much, and thanks to all our contributors. I suppose the big thing I'm looking for is hope, because the targets, the figures, the sort of finances, I know they're important. You have to go through all this detail to deliver social and affordable housing. But I've kind of been around a while now, and from the point of view of the human reality, absolutely nothing has changed in terms of the misery that I'm witnessing coming through my door week in, week out of people in housing crisis situations. And particularly, again, in the last few months, it's just getting worse. The particular sort of cohort of cases I'm getting at the moment are people who are working who have been on social housing lists for sometimes 10, 15 years, and they're now getting taken off housing lists. So all their time is gone, but their earnings are only marginally over the thresholds. So that 10 or 15 years where they thought eventually I'll get housed is just gone. But their earnings are such that they haven't got a prayer of ever buying in my area, where average house prices are 560,000. The affordable housing, but I'd like your comments on this. As I see it, I don't see how it's going to deliver anything in my area at those house prices. I just can't see, because even with 30% shared equity by the local authority, I just don't see how people at those income levels are going to be able to afford shared equity. I very excitedly, I had one fellow who works for the council who'd been knocked off the list after 10 years, and when I heard about Enniskerry Road, I rang him up. I said, get on to the Enniskerry Road, there's new cost rental stuff up there. And he rang me back half an hour later and he said, you must be joking. It's €1,200 a month. I couldn't afford that on my wages. And, at the moment, another council worker was in me this week who's living in his car. He's working for the local council and he's living in his car. Another fellow who's got a family and he's working in a Dublin hospital on the front line. And he's just about to be evicted. And he thinks he'll be living in his car with his family, with an ill wife and kids. And they're told, go to place finders. Place finders can't find anywhere either within the HAP limits. So it's just hopelessness and despair. So I'm looking for a bit of hope, right, from the people here. And one way I can't sort of judge these things, and I would like to see the figures on it, is because you can have these projections, we're going to deliver this many by this year, but one thing it doesn't tell you is how many people are getting knocked off the lists nationally every year. And I put in a question to the Minister recently. I was told they don't know the answer. They can't find the information. I wonder, possibly, could the CCMA provide that answer? Because the Minister can't or won't. Because I think that figure would be helpful. I'd also like to know, given the projections for delivery, how many are going to join the lists? Do we have a rough estimate of how many people are going to additionally join the lists over the period of the plan? Because again, figures don't mean a lot if we can't judge them against how many more people are going to go on the lists. But particularly on the income thresholds, I would like to sort of ask, anybody who's willing to answer, but the AHBs, see, there's a lot of talk about we have to move away from segregation and stigma about social housing. But to me, we're going in the exact opposite direction. And I just wonder, would you agree? While the income thresholds stay as they are, and have done for the last 10 years, it means that people who are eligible for social housing are lower and lower and lower income. So people who traditionally could get social housing, who might be working as, construction workers or bank workers or postal workers or health workers or council workers, increasingly they're not eligible. So actually, we're narrowing down the cohort of people who are eligible for social housing, and we're telling them somehow there's going to be something else called cost rental or affordable, but I can't see the scale of that being able to match the demand. I just can't see it. Now maybe again you can give me hope on this, but I just can't See it, yeah. So maybe you could respond to that, and that sort of cohort who are just becoming increasingly, there's no avenues for them, and I just don't see where the avenues are.
No, it's a very difficult situation. Enniskerry Road, in a 5-day, 7-day window we opened, was 10 times oversubscribed. Parklands in City West has just closed after 5 days, 44 apartments. There's 508 applications. We'll go into a computerised lottery. The same will happen in a month's time in Kilcarbery. So clearly there's a massive demand, and there is this focus on, if you like, the missing, like cost rental for me is the missing link of policy. It's for the people who are falling through the middle, and that gap is growing all the time. And I think the difference in Austria and Vienna is that actually social housing is available to anyone.
To everybody.
Yes. And that is the more radical solution, that you don't have a compartmentalised cost rental scheme and a social housing scheme. And possibly you would get better mixed tenure through a solution like that. But I'm not in government, and nor are my colleagues. So we're implementing policy. We think it's a positive step forward. It's just, how do you get enough into the marketplace at one time? And effectively, once it does start to impact, it theoretically should have a bigger policy drive to reduce rents, you know, in the open market. Because why would you rent in a private apartment if you can rent? And I know what you've said about Enniskerry Road, and it said that, but it's approximately 50% below. 1,200 is about 50% below the open market rent. Currently, it's 2,400 a month for a new 2-bed flat. So it's a significant discount, but for some people it's not enough. If the state was to rework the scheme and make CREL 40 or 50% or grant, then that would resolve the problem. But it means someone putting in more subsidy.
I don't think I'm going to be able to provide you with much hope, but maybe a little bit of information. As I understand it, the department has completed its review of income eligibility guidelines for social housing. I don't know whether any changes are proposed, but as I understand it, the work is done in that regard. To my knowledge, no one does projections in terms of what they anticipate, although we may have some information out of the Housing Needs and Demand Assessment tool now, which was used to set the targets for the Local Authority Action Plan. So we may, in fact, have some information which would give you an indication of what's coming forward, but that's not in the public domain yet. I know that the department, when they're in here next week, will point out to you that the housing list has been falling, albeit not by a very large amount. To me, one dimension of that which is really, really under-discussed is the mix. Oftentimes when we talk about housing in Ireland, we talk about, you know, your 3-bed semi-D, but from memory, I think 52% of people on the housing list are single-person households. Higher in Dublin. And then, what is it, 25% lone parents with 1 or 2 children? So actually our demand for accommodation, so smaller accommodation, is really, really high. One of the things you'd worry, like, what if we built 33,000 3-bed semi-Ds a year for the next? We'd still have a housing problem at the end of it. So the mix is really, really important. But the impetus is because they're more expensive. That means funding up.
Okay, thank you.
I think CCMA might have wanted.
Okay, well, we're almost up to 10 minutes there now. You had quite an introduction into your...
No, I did, sorry.
So, Mr.
So
Curran,
many questions.
If you could be very brief, Mr. Curran,
yeah.
and then we can move on to other members.
Housing lists are decreasing, there's no question about that. And how they'll decrease into the future is in relation to supply. So, you know, there is a target of 47,600 new build social dwellings by 2026, and I outlined earlier in relation to the numbers that are on site, and you know, 11,000 currently under construction, 3,500 about to start construction, 8,500 at planning and design stage. And, you know, there's a target of 18,000 for affordable purchase and a target of 10,480 for cost rental. And that's what's going to make the difference. And, you know, of the 33,000 units that are going to be built in Ireland each year for the next number of years, a third of those will be social units. You know, that's what makes a difference to housing lists. That's Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kern.